Welcome. Tonight, we travel back. It's far back. Not to the great empires or the bustling cities of later centuries, but to an age when the world was colder, when ice sheets stretched across continents, and when human survival was a daily test of endurance. This is the Ice Age. A time when survival meant walking endlessly in search of food, when fire was both protection and warmth, and when every day was shaped by the rhythms of the earth and the shifting climate. So now, let us begin with daily life among those who struggled, step by step, against hunger, cold, and distance. Imagine yourself in a wide open landscape. The ground beneath your feet is firm, hardened by frost. The air is crisp, almost biting at the skin. In the distance, the silhouettes of reindeer drift across the horizon, their slow movements echoing the steady rhythm of the land. This is the world of a small hunter-gatherer band tens of thousands of years ago. Perhaps 20 or 30 people, men, women, children, and elders walking together. They carry what little they own on their backs. Tools chipped from stone, furs for warmth, and small woven bags filled with dried roots and berries. Their lives are not hurried, but they are never still for long. The seasons, the animals, and the shifting availability of plants dictate each step. One day, the group might rest beside a riverbank, fashioning new spearheads from flint. Another, they might walk for hours, quietly, conserving energy, their breaths leaving faint trails of mist in the cold morning air. You might notice the rhythm of their walking. Long strides over uneven ground, it's the crunch of frost beneath worn sandals made from animal hide. For them, walking is not a task, but a way of life. Endless, necessary, and familiar. At night they gather together. Fire burns low, its smoke rising into the star-filled sky. The warmth is faint, but enough to keep out the worst of the chill. Children curl close to their mothers, while the hunters sit silently, watching the sparks lift into the dark. Sleep comes slowly, broken by the cold that presses in as the flames diminish. Hunger is a constant companion. Meals are uncertain, sometimes plentiful, after a successful hunt. Sometimes nothing more than a handful of berries or a few scraps of dried meat. The body grows lean, shaped by scarcity. Every person in the group knows the feeling of emptiness in the stomach, knows the long patience required to wait for the next chance at food. And yet there is beauty here too. The sound of the river thawing in spring, the scent of pine resin on a warmer day. The soft texture of animal fur carefully worked into clothing by patient hands. Even in the struggle, life has its moments of quiet rhythm, where the world feels both harsh and steady, immense and familiar. The tools they carry are simple, yet essential. A stone scraper to clean hides, a wooden spear tipped with flint, a bone needle, smooth and delicate, used to stitch together clothing. Each object tells a story of effort and necessity. Every tool is valued, for without it, survival becomes harder still. Illness and injury come often. A sprained ankle, a fever, a deep chill from too many nights in damp clothing, any one of these might threaten survival. There are no medicines as we know them now. Instead, herbs are gathered, rituals performed, and the group's collective care becomes the only protection. Life is fragile and always close to the edge, but the rhythm continues. Step after step, season after season, this small clan endures. They do not think of history or the distant future. They know only the pressing present. Hunger, fire, shelter, and the endless walking. Imagine yourself there, walking with them, the weight of the pack on your shoulders. It's a steady crunch of the earth beneath your feet, the taste of cold air in your lungs, the quiet murmurs of the group as night falls and the fire flickers low. In their world, survival is the story. Every day they write it anew. Now let us step forward in time, though still deep within the long ages of ice. It is the year 3300 BCE, in the high mountains that divide what we now call Italy and Austria. Snow lies thick across the peaks. The wind whistles softly across narrow ridges. And here, hidden beneath the ice for thousands of years, a man rests. He is known to us as C. the Iceman. Discovered in 1991 by two hikers, his body had been preserved in a natural tomb of snow and frozen ground for more than 5 millennia. Unlike the imagined figures of prehistory, here is something tangible, a real person, whose life and final days are written into his skin, his tools, and the few belongings he carried. C was about 45 years old when he died. His height, his bones, even the contents of his stomach remain with us, locked away for centuries in the ice. From these traces, scientists and historians have pieced together glimpses of his story. Imagine him walking slowly up a mountain path, a woven cloak draped over his shoulders. His clothing is surprisingly intricate, stitched from the hides of goats and deer, carefully layered for warmth. Around his waist, a belt carries a pouch filled with small, useful items: a flint scraper, a drill, and a small tool for sharpening blades. Strapped to his side is a copper axe, its head gleaming faintly in the light, fixed firmly to a wooden handle. It is a remarkable object, one of the oldest known metal tools ever found. This axe tells us that C lived in a time of change, when human communities were just beginning to shift from the Stone Age into a world shaped by metal. His shoes, lined with grass and leather, are sturdy, crafted to endure the sharp stones and cold ground of the mountains. Everything he carried was practical, nothing wasted, nothing ornamental. Each item had a purpose, and yet his final journey was not easy. Evidence tells us he was wounded, an arrowhead lodged in his shoulder. Perhaps he was ambushed, perhaps caught in a conflict, perhaps simply unlucky. Whatever the cause, his life ended in the silence of the mountains, his body soon hidden beneath falling snow. For thousands of years he rested there undisturbed. Seasons passed over him. Winters piled snow upon his form, summers melted streams that ran past his frozen grave. Entire civilizations rose and fell far below in the valleys, while he remained quietly preserved, waiting. And then, in 1991, the ice receded just enough for hikers to stumble upon his remains. At first, they thought he was a lost mountaineer from modern times. Only later, as archaeologists studied the body, did the truth emerge. This man was older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than written words. Today, C rests in a climate-controlled chamber in Bolzano, Italy. His body carefully preserved at the same freezing temperatures that once held him for millennia. Visitors may see him through a small window, though the air inside his chamber is carefully maintained so that his form does not decay further. His presence reminds us how much can be learned from even a single life. His tools tell us what he valued. His clothes tell us how he fought the cold. His wounds whisper of danger and conflict in a world we so often imagine only as survival against the elements. Imagine standing quietly before that small chamber, gazing through the glass. You see the shape of a man who lived over 5,000 years ago, who walked and breathed, who carried his belongings just as you carry yours today. Life ended long ago, and yet still present, still close enough to touch with your eyes. C's mystery remains. Was he a hunter, a wanderer, a victim of betrayal? We cannot say for certain. The ice preserved his body, but not his story. And so, he lingers in our imagination, a solitary figure caught between life and death, past and present. And with that, we drift onward from a single man's frozen fate into the wider world of his time. A world where others, too, left their mark, not in flesh and bone, but in paint, deep inside the darkness of caves. Now let us move from the frozen mountains to the hidden interiors of the earth. In the southwest of France lies a cave, its entrance narrow and unremarkable, almost easy to pass by. Yet inside, stretching across chamber after chamber, the walls come alive with painted shapes. Horses, bison, stags, and other animals move in shades of red, black, and ochre. This is Lascaux Cave, one of the most famous sites of Ice Age art, painted nearly 17,000 years ago. It offers us a silent dialogue with the people who once lived in that distant time. Imagine following them into the cave. The light is dim, the air cool and heavy. Flames flicker from simple lamps, small hollowed stones filled with animal fat, a wick of moss burning slowly. The smoke drifts upward into the darkness as footsteps echo softly on the stone floor. In this darkness, artists worked patiently, carefully mixing pigments from earth and charcoal. They ground minerals into powder, blending them with water, fat, or even saliva to create paint. Brushes made from hair or chewed sticks left strokes against the rock, while hollow bones served as primitive airbrushes, allowing color to be blown across the stone. The paintings show herds of animals in motion. Horses with flowing manes, deer with wide antlers branching like trees, bison heavy and muscular, some charging, others calm and still. These creatures cover the walls, layer upon layer, as if countless hands returned again and again to add their mark. What purpose did these paintings serve? That is a question that lingers. Perhaps they were part of rituals, meant to summon success in the hunt. Perhaps they carried spiritual meaning, animals honored as beings of power. Or perhaps they were simply acts of expression, images for beauty, for memory, for wonder. Whatever their intent, the act of painting in such a hidden, dark place suggests importance. These were not decorations for everyday life. They were made in places where sunlight never reached, where only deliberate effort could bring light. To step inside was to leave the world of daily struggle behind and enter another realm, quiet, enclosed, eternal. Picture yourself standing there, deep within the cave. The air is cool on your skin. Your only light comes from a flickering flame, which makes the painted horses seem to shift, as though moving with life. The silence is profound, broken only by the faint crackle of fire and the drip of water from above. The people who created these works lived lives of constant motion outside the cave, walking, hunting, gathering, and yet here they paused. They left marks meant to last beyond their own lives, perhaps not knowing how far into the future those marks would travel, and so they remain vivid even after thousands of years. The animals painted at Lascaux still run, still leap, still breathe through pigment on stone. They remind us that even in the most demanding conditions, humans sought something more than survival. They sought to remember, to imagine, and to create. The cave paintings stand as whispers from the deep past, silent, yet speaking of connection between people and animals, between earth and spirit, between the fleeting moment and lasting memory. And when we step back from those painted walls, we see not only animals, but the shape of humanity itself. Restless, searching, always finding ways to leave a trace behind. From here, we move gently to another question. If some painted, and some hunted, and some carried burdens, then who guided them? Who held influence within these early groups? Who carried the weight of knowledge or the authority of belief? To answer this, we turn now to the subtle, shadowy figures of Ice Age society, the shamans, the storytellers, and the early leaders who shaped the path of their people. We have walked with the clan, we have stood before Ti, and we have gazed at the painted walls of Lascaux. Now let us look more closely at the people themselves, not the ordinary hunter or the gatherer, but those who, in subtle ways, rose above. Kings, not generals, not nobles as we know them, but still a kind of elite. In small bands of Ice Age people, leadership was not written into law. It was not displayed through thrones or monuments. Instead, influence lived in knowledge of the land, of the animals, of the plants, of the unseen. There were those who were known for their skill in the hunt. They walked at the front of the group, reading the faintest tracks, noticing the tilt of a blade of grass or the scatter of a bird. Their knowledge fed the clan, and so their voice carried weight. Others carried a different kind of power, the power of memory. These were the storytellers. Round the fire, as the flames crackled low, they spoke of ancestors, of hunts long past, of spirits and lessons. They remembered paths through valleys, places where berries grew in summer, rivers where fish gathered in spring. To listen to them was to hear the map of the world itself. And so, the storyteller held a place of quiet authority, not through force, but through words. And then, there were the shamans, the figures, who stepped between the visible and the invisible. Often wrapped in furs, sometimes painted with ash or ochre, they were thought to have sight beyond ordinary eyes. They interpreted dreams, calmed fears, and led rituals in caves or beneath the open sky. Some may have used rhythmic drumming or the flickering shadows of firelight to guide others into trance. In their presence, people felt closer to the mysteries of life and death, closer to the forces they could not control. These shamans were not rulers, but they were listened to. Their advice might shape when the group moved, or when a hunt began, or how to honor the animals taken for food. In a world full of uncertainty, the shaman offered a sense of order, a bridge between the harsh reality of daily survival and the larger patterns of existence. Even in the Ice Age, there were those who held knowledge of healing. They gathered herbs. They understood which roots eased pain, which leaves soothed a wound. Their skill was not perfect, but it was valued. For in a fragile life, even a little healing meant much. These healers, too, formed part of the quiet elite, shaping survival not by strength, but by care. Together, these figures, the hunter, the storyteller, the shaman, the healer, formed the closest thing to leaders in that world. Their influence was not absolute, but it was trusted. Their voices carried in the circle around the fire, shaping decisions, guiding journeys, keeping memory alive. Imagine sitting among them. Fire burns low, sparks drifting up into the night. The storyteller's voice is soft, steady, recounting an old hunt. The shaman sits in silence, eyes half closed, listening to the crackle of the flames as if they speak. The hunters listen too, thinking of the paths ahead. Children drift toward sleep, leaning against their mothers. Elders nod, remembering times long past. Here in this circle, we see that humanity's search for meaning, for guidance, and for connection is not new. It reaches back into the Ice Age, when even without cities or writing, people still sought voices to follow, stories to keep, and patterns to trust. And so, the elite of that world were not rulers as we know them today, but guides people who helped their clans endure through knowledge, through memory, through ritual, and through care. From their firesides to our own, they remind us that leadership begins not in monuments, but in the quiet weight of wisdom. And so, our long walk through the Ice Age draws to its end. We began with the rhythm of daily life, fenless walking, the sharp bite of hunger, the fleeting warmth of fire. We paused with sea, the frozen traveler whose silent body carried us across 5,000 years. We stepped into the painted darkness of Lascaux, where animals still run in ochre and charcoal. And we listened to the voices of the early leaders, hunters, healers, storytellers, and shamans who shaped their small communities with knowledge and memory. The Ice Age was a time of struggle, yes, but also of persistence. A time when survival was uncertain, yet people still found moments to create, to remember, to imagine. If you think of them now, those clans gathered by their fires, the figures bent over cave walls with their pigments, the shaman, whispering to unseen spirits, you may feel both distance and closeness. Their world was harsh, yet their humanity was familiar. They carried burdens, but also hopes. They walked endlessly, but always together. And now, as you rest here in the quiet comfort of your own time, you are far from their cold nights, their hunger, their endless journeys. The warmth around you is steady. The ground beneath you is safe. Your next meal is assured. Let the contrast soothe you. Let it remind you how much the world has changed and how far humanity has traveled. From ice and stone to stories and light, take a slow breath. Imagine the last embers of the Ice Age fire fading into ash. Above, the night sky stretches wide, filled with stars that they once saw too and changed, eternal. And as those ancient fires fade, may your own mind grow quiet. May your breathing deepen. May you drift gently, calmly into rest. Good night.